With that, we will now move on to our next session, that is World of Tech Intensity and Startups Innovation for Transforming India. And our moderator for this session, Nisha Poddar, market anchor and editor, M&A, CNBC TV 18. With about 15 years of experience in business journalism, she's a market anchor. Her expertise lies in breaking exclusive stock impacting stories during market hours. She leads the M&A coverage for CNBC TV 18 and has gained credibility after breaking big exclusives like Idea Vodafone merger much before anyone could have shared about it. Ladies and gentlemen, can we give it up for Nisha Poddar? Hi, Nisha.
Thank you so much for those kind words, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here. In fact, my job is quite easy because we have two excellent orators right here in this particular session, and they'll be giving their presentation on two intense topics on startups as well as technology. So let me start by introducing the two people who are going to be on the panel today. And then, of course, there'll be an opportunity for all of you to ask questions from them as well. And I'm looking forward to their sessions. It's going to be an absolute treat. Let me introduce Anant Maheshwari, who's the president of Microsoft India. And he is the country head for the company in the country. And he is going to talk about an intense subject, which is world of tech intensity. He's worked with Honeywell as well as McKinsey and company as well. But one thing that people don't know about him is that he is a self-proclaimed foodie as well. But what we are looking for today is going to be a lot of food for thought when it comes to technology from Anant. We'll also have Nivruti, the country head of Intel India. But let's first begin with Anant on the stage. And he has an intense topic to talk about, which is world of tech intensity. Anant Maheshwari, stage is all yours.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Nisha. Thank you so much. It's not as intense as it is made out to be. But first of all, thanks a lot for TiEcon Mumbai to invite me here. It's an honor to be here and talk to all of you. I know this is a lot of good speakers that I'm following, and especially just following the story of Udaan, who we are very closely associated with. It's just amazing to see what's happening in the country and what's possible. So as you go there and as you think about startups, think about what's possible. I was inspired by what Shri Parekh said in the morning, that roughly about a little over 40 years back, a startup was born called HDFC. And just about the same time, this one picture was clicked, just about the same time. There was another startup born in another part of the world, and these two people try to do something very different in the world of software. That's Bill Gates and Paul Allen starting up at Microsoft. And the story that they had an aspiration, and many startups have that aspiration to get to the second picture, which is becoming an enterprise. And over the 40 years that they built this company, Bill was involved and still is as a mentor. And finally, the mantle passed on to the third CEO of the company, Satya Nadella. And since then, again, Microsoft has had a tremendous run. But I think the feeling inside is completely of a startup. It just remains in that zone. So as you look at that journey and you ask yourself what happens in the journey of a startup to a growth stage, to a unicorn, and then to an enterprise. I think the questions remain fairly constant, and some of those questions, if answered well in the beginning, and some real work done to make those answers happen, and then deliver success along with it, you can then see the success stories, the success mantras. And those questions are around, in the world of tech startups, around what platforms, what ecosystems do I work with? What's the balance between scalability and speed? Do I prioritize speed more than scale immediately? Which are the customer segments that I would prioritize, and who would I work with in the beginning, customers, partners? A big question that a lot of startups do ask is, what is my core intellectual property? What do I really stand for? What's the real value that I own and I am creating? And finally, as I think was mentioned in the Udan story, there are enough pivots that happen in the stories of the startups, and how those pivots are transitioned by the companies. So these are some questions. I'm not going to answer all of these questions. I just want to set the context of these are the questions. But I think the journey of technology is very critical for any startup that is starting up today or is in the growth stage or even in the unicorn stage in India and around the world. Let me start with a very simple factoid that is talked about a lot but is not that much well appreciated. Just two numbers, 73% and 4x. On the planet today, there are roughly about 40 zettabytes of data. 73% of that data is not really getting touched or analyzed. It's only 1/4 of the data that's on the planet that's getting analyzed. That's where technology is playing to analyze that data. In the next 5 years, this data of 40 zettabytes is going to become more than 170 zettabytes, 4 times. So what do you do with that data? How do you create value out of that data? And that's why technology has become such a key driver. That's the real power of the fourth industrial revolution. So how to solve the opportunity and the responsibility that exists to make real value out of this data is something that I will touch upon. There is this concept of tech intensity. And a couple of years back, Satya sort of outlined it into a very simple equation. He said tech intensity is nothing but a simple product of tech adoption and tech capability inside the company. And in the world that we live in, it's not enough to do just tech adoption and tech capability. You have to raise it to the power of trust. It's a very simple equation. And how you work that equation and what you do with that equation kind of becomes the secret of the success of startups. So let me start with the first of the pieces of this equation, which is tech adoption. Why do you need to adopt technology? So if you just look at the journey, we are in the 20th year now of TiEcon in Mumbai, and there is a lot of startup community that exists around the world. Again, let's start with two numbers. Across the world today, there are less than 1.5 million startups. A lot of these have technology at the core of what they do. They are tech companies. They may be e-commerce engines. They may be food delivery companies. They may be solving many other problems in fashion and so on. But at the core of it, they are tech companies. In the next 5 years, 500 million applications are likely to be created. Just rest those numbers. 1.5 million startups who are tech-led today. In the next 5 years, 500 million applications to be created. It's not just the startups, but even the traditional enterprises are moving forward quickly to change the game and play with technology. So core tech is going to become a large part of innovation, whether you're a startup or you're an enterprise. To disrupt, whether you're a startup or if you're an enterprise. And how does that play out? I'll share with you a worldview of what is the platform capability that every enterprise, every business, every startup has to look at. On the left side, you see the worldview of technology, which is intelligent cloud, an intelligent edge. Edge is something that all of you carry in your pockets, in your wrists. You're wearing it. That's the edge. It's in the washing machine. It's in the TV. It's in anything that you touch in your car. There's edge all over the place. And it seems like gravity. Cloud is at the center. It is the data that is flowing between the edge and the cloud. So that's the worldview of the total technology that exists on the planet. And on the right are three trend lines that are shaping this as we go along. Number one, ubiquitous computing. 7 billion people on the planet. In the next few years, there will be 50 billion connected devices. Again, a different order of magnitude. And if you take that edge devices and how it works with the cloud, you have just tremendous opportunity. It's ubiquitous. It's around you. You're touching a computer nearly all the time. Right now, it's in your pocket, in your hand, in your purse. It could be anywhere, but it's a computer. Then, multi-device, multi-sense experiences. Today, there is primarily one or two senses that we are using. We are talking to it a little bit. We are touching it. But soon, all senses of the human body will start getting used in interacting with this ubiquitous computing. And finally, AI. Not just a buzzword, it's reality. Today in India, more than 700 enterprises are truly driving not just pilots, but real use cases of artificial intelligence. So this is not something that's going to happen in the future. It's here and now. It's already happened. And therefore, that is the worldview of technology. The big question that I would ask every startup, every company, every enterprise to ask in this world of tech adoption is, what do you make and what do you buy and adopt? That's the question between scale and speed. Because whatever you take as a decision today, let's just say you decided to make something, you are, in a way, stuck with it for the future. And are you going to be able to maintain that, and is that unique to what you can create? And what can you adopt and build on it and start sort of being fast in getting scale? So it's not really a question, scale versus speed. It can actually go together. And that's a question that every company is asking today. What do I make? What do I buy or adopt? And that, I think, is the big question for tech adoption. Let's move to the second part of the equation. Tech capability. Again, a very interesting phenomena happening in the world today, and I represent a tech company. We originated in software. We are amongst the largest hardware users in the world today, given our data center footprint around the world. These are called the modern factories of humankind. And therefore, there's a lot happening in tech capability in terms of skill sets. Start again with a couple of numbers. Today, 60% of software engineers are actually being hired outside of the tech industry. 60%. And the industry that has always led the industrial revolution, automotive industry, is hiring 3 times software engineers compared to mechanical engineers. 3 times. That is the world that we live in today. Every company is a tech company, is a software company. And therefore, you are building your own capability inside the company. So you may adopt a platform, you may buy a platform, but you build your own secret sauce on it. You build your own capability that distinguishes you from your peer group and from your competition. So the question you need to ask in capability building is, in the context of India, how do we think about it? It is actually advantage India today. India is number 3 on the total rank of AI skills in the world. It is blessed with the talent, therefore, on a lot of these tech trends that we are talking about. 700 million people is the capacity that we will have of our workforce in the next 3 years. And an oft misunderstood fact is how that will impact us. Nearly 1/3 of the jobs that we will have in 3 years' time will have to use and will be using new skills. At times it scares us that, in 3 years everybody will need to have skills, new skills. I can tell you that a lot of you are using applications on your phone today that didn't even exist 3 years back. You are really driving a lot of tech adoption and capability building for yourself. All of us do that. Just a little while back, in the Udaan story, we were talking about how in the hinterland of India, a farmer, a small merchant, is using technology and has got those skills, even though he or she may not be able to read the language that it may be written in completely. But pictures and different ways of communicating are able to just get that person to use new skills in driving technology. So the big question that you got to ask in tech capability building inside your company or in whatever you do is, what is the mix of the core skill sets that I may have with the tech skills that I'm infusing into myself? And I'll give you a personal example there, and I'm very passionate about it. 4 years back when I got to Microsoft, I came from the industrial world. I was very used to using reams of paper to take a lot of notes. And I was sitting in front of, soon after joining Microsoft, I was sitting in front of a CEO talking about how they could create a paperless office because they were thinking about digitizing their entire business. And while this person was speaking, I was taking my notes on my notebook. And I just, at the end of it, when I walked out of that meeting, I said, I am trying to paint the vision of this new cutting-edge way of working, and look what I am doing. And that's when it struck me that I have to change myself. And that was the day I used to carry roughly about 6 or 8 pens at any point in time in my pockets, in my bag, different colors, taking different kinds of notes, because that's the way I had learned for 4 decades how to work. That's how I had been educated. And literally on that day, I took all of those pens and I put them out. And I said, I'm not going to use an ink pen going forward. And necessity is the mother of invention, and suddenly I had to start using tech capabilities that were available. I still take a lot of notes today, way more than what I used to do with ink pens. I collaborate much better. My notes are not a secret that I keep. My entire team has got access to them. And they suddenly feel that I am a better leader because I'm sharing my notes more easily. And they're able to work through that. Tech intensity is something that each one of us has to play on. Tech capability is something that each one of us needs to play on. It's not for somebody else to come and do. Create an app, and then you use it. That is true, but we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we are leaving away of the past to build the future? Let me move to the third part of the equation, trust. And I'd like to remember here in the opening session when Atul spoke about the 4 principles on which the entire industry in IT industry was built. And he spent some time on talking through his 4th principle, which was around trust. Very, very important. Very important in the way we all need to think about business. So there is a lot of debate in the world today around how we should think about data, privacy, security, transparency. How do you control it? Who controls it? Who has it? Do I have access to my own data? Is my data being seen by somebody else? Do I know what they're doing with that data? And so on. Very, very valid questions. So again, starting with 2 numbers. The total impact of cybercrime in the world today is about $1 trillion. Just 2 years back, this was $600 billion. It's increasing at a very, very rapid pace. 2 years back was also when the world took its first bold step of creating regulation around data privacy. This was the European Union coming up with GDPR and laying the first gold standard of what data privacy could mean. And I remember at that point in time, Microsoft enabled the GDPR capabilities across the world. We were amongst the first ones to actually take that law and say this should apply to the entire world, and therefore enabled all platforms with GDPR. And within the last 2 years, 26 million people have used GDPR controls. So it is really impactful to say that I think there was also the comment that Sri Parekh made in the morning that don't wait for the law, what's right is right, work with values. And I think that is the thinking that we had, don't wait for the law to come up in other parts of the world, just work it. And there again, I'll draw an analogy from the industrial world, because in the startup world, we feel this is all real, but human history has seen it in different patterns in the past. Going back to the second and the third industrial revolution, it took about a century, more than 100 years, for the second and the third industrial revolution to play out. For the first 50 years, a lot of manufacturing plants were set up across the world. Till about 1960, 1970, nobody had heard the word environment in terms of what you got to think of in setting up those manufacturing facilities and creating industrialization. By the late 90s, early 2000 is when the laws actually came into play for the environment. And today, in 2020, that is the biggest issue that everybody speaks about. What's happened is all of those companies, when they set up their businesses, they can clearly say, listen, when I set this business up, there was no law on environment. So why are you judging me today, 30 years later, with a law that has been set up just now? But the fact is that's required by humankind. And if you take the same analogy, that happened over more than a century, more than 100 years. In the world of the fourth industrial revolution, this is playing out in less than a decade. So you are truly working with principles of trust, which are omnipresent. Your mission and your business model has to really be ready to receive laws that have not been written today. And you will be judged by laws around security, reliability, compliance, privacy, ethics, transparency. And all of those laws will come into play because law generally lags the actual usage of any industry. And so the big question that I would leave on trust, are you building a business today that will stand the test of time on trust? Because very soon your business model and your mission may just be considered illegal because the law was written later on. And you will ask the question, when I started this business, the law wasn't there. And many of the tech companies today are facing that challenge in terms of how they manage the legal frameworks that are coming around trust, around data. So to close out, I truly believe there is an opportunity for all of us, and there's also a responsibility as to how we bring this tech intensity to play out in the progress of the world and in India in the next 3 to 5 years. It is something that we have to lead. We have to lead the change. And before I go into the final wrap-up of my talk, I would ask for a video to be played because I think this captures a lot about both the opportunity and the responsibility. Please play the video.
My name is Grover.
Sean. My name is Ian.
I'm Taylor.
My name is Owen, and I am 9.5 years old.
So Owen was born with a rare genetic disorder called Escobar syndrome.
He's had 33 surgeries to date.
I love video games, my friends, my family, and again video games.
It's his way of interacting with his friends when he can't physically otherwise do it.
What I like about the adaptive controller is now everyone can play. You can just say, all right, that's that button, that's that button, that's that button. Perfect.
One of the biggest fears early on is, how will Owen be viewed by the other kids? He's not different when he plays.
No matter how your body is or how fast you are, you can play. It's a really good thing to have in this world.
I think it is very important to believe what technology can actually do for us. There are 1 billion people on the planet who are not part of the regular workforce or even the regular mainstream of society because of disabilities. And there, I think technology can play such an important role to just increase the joy for them and the productivity for mankind in how we can harness a lot of those ideas, a lot of those capabilities into the mainstream. And there are small beginnings that are happening in India, and just some examples of what we are working on in terms of solving the biggest problems that the country faces. When you look at schooling, in education, how do you really enable the real attention and development of every child so that a 10th class dropout can cause a demographic dividend or a demographic bomb if the child actually stays in school? And can AI help in just engaging that child just before the child dropped out. 10th class is, by the way, the highest point at which dropouts happen in the country. Farmers in India are increasing productivity by up to 30% by using artificial intelligence just to know when to sow, depending on the changing weather patterns. There is a lot of support in looking at diabetes or even in the eye healthcare, a lot of work that's happening in cardiovascular that's happening to really get the best patient care to every patient. And finally, just integrated learning. There's that many smartphones in the country. Yes, you can watch a lot of videos to get entertained when you're traveling or when you're sitting by your own. But today we are using the same capability to say when you're traveling on a bus commute to actually get to your workplace, in that 20 minutes or 30 minutes, can you actually get trained for the next skill? And that's Sangam, to really bring through a platform where you keep learning at any point in time that you may have. So with that, I'll close. I think our mission is very simple, to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. Thanks a lot for listening to me.
A great, great thought, and also the heartwarming video. And also the way you married technology with the things that we can do in our own lives in terms of buying and also making our own capabilities when it comes to technology. And that is tech intensity that he was talking about. But we lift off from where he left, which is on innovation and how it's going to transform the world and how India can make a difference in that. And for that, Nivruti Rai, who heads Intel India, is going to come up on stage. Let me tell you one very important thing about Nivruti. When she was growing up, she wanted to become a fashion designer. I'm so glad she's an out-and-out techie and she's here amongst us, because I've heard her speak and she is most passionate when she talks about technology. Nivruti, stage is all yours.
Use 2 guys, and I'll tell you what kind of people we need. Here are 5 more people that we need. And we were so dispensable that the minute the project finished, we were not sure whether we'll have those people. So while you view me as a country head, all these fancy titles that are placed against my name, I will tell you we have been a most struggling startup. The only difference between you and me is I was married to my VC. My VC was Global Intel sitting in Santa Clara. We had to work really hard to earn every single task that we did, every single innovation that we proved. We had to show it to our VC and earn what we earned today. I'm happy to tell you, 20 years later, we are 20,000 employees, all R&D, all driving critical engineering work for the globe. I will also tell you, thank you. And goes without saying, being a woman adds its own complexity. And being somebody interested in fashion adds yet another level of complexity. But what I wanted to tell you that innovation is very critical. My title of the presentation has innovation in it. I will start with a few studies that I basically read to make sure that I make my talk relevant for the people here. There was an Oxford economic study that was done which said Indian startups in 5 years, 90% of them cease to exist. And most of us would believe that maybe they were not funded, they had 1 round of funding but couldn't go to the 2nd round. No. The answer was innovation was lacking. We are considered to be follower kind of country, follower market, follower business model, follower innovation. That was the problem. Problem number 1, innovation was lacking. I will tell you another study that was done. It's called Entrepreneurial India. You know what that Entrepreneurial India came back with? It came back with what lacks is we often tend to copy something that's working in United States, Israel, or China, or whatever other country you can think of that have been successful. We tend to copy, not realizing what or what will not work for India. We heard a great presentation, great inspiring talk by our Udan founder. But I will also tell you the 3 areas where most of the startups had failed. Remember the 90% number that I called out? Was in logistics, was in e-retail, and was in food technology. So just because we had a Flipkart, just because we have an Udan, doesn't mean all our entrepreneurs need to be focusing on these 3 areas. I also want to tell you that, Anant also called out, we are the 3rd largest startup nation. United States and China together add up to create 80% of unicorns. United States, let me tell you what are the 3 areas where they're creating the unicorn startups. Cloud technology, AI, and health sciences. Let me tell you where China is making all their unicorns. E-retail, e-automotives meaning electric cars, and thirdly, health. I really believe that we need to identify what are those areas that we need to innovate on. Not just innovate on, and make sure that we have customers who are willing to buy your technology. It is very important to focus on just 2 things when you're thinking startup. It has to have a great product through innovation. You've got to be unique. Second, you have to have a market. You have to understand who are you going to sell to. I will share with you one quote, perhaps a little bit later on, by Mahatma Gandhi in 1890. He had set a vision that many of us oftentimes forget. The one statement that he made, this was, by the way, in a speech in South Africa, you can Google and find out, customer is the reason we exist. So make sure you've identified the customer and then create the purpose of your work. So with that large enough an introduction, I'm going to start my presentation. I told you I am a startup as Intel India. I have shoestring budget. I had shoestring budget. It's not as difficult as 20 years ago anymore. But honestly, we created ourselves as an innovation Intel India. Let me tell you what does innovation really mean. 3 things you should remember when you think innovation. People, value, and execution/implementation. I really loved the Udan talk when he said the primary reason how division of tasks works between the founders, the basic element is trust. So find people, trusting people who have each other's back, who create value. If you're driving an innovation, it has to create value today or tomorrow. If you're an R&D outfit whose job is to create innovation that can create value maybe 7 years, 10 years from now, okay. But you've got to be able to create value through innovation. Otherwise, honestly, it will sit in the patent portfolio, rusting away, and in 2 years, it will have 0 value. That's the pace of change of creation of IP. The last thing in this innovation definition is implementation. As Intel, I can tell you, because this is an example that I live daily, we have 100,000 plus very smart people. We have a rigorous process of interviews. We get basically a dime a dozen ideas sitting on a PowerPoint presentation. We have fantastic PowerPoint engineers. But guess what? Who are the ones who are able to succeed, who are able to create value, who have the right team? Are the people who actually go show me something. Show the CEO something. There's a proof of concept. You take your idea. You believe in it. You rally around with people and execute on your idea. You have something to show. Now if I go to my VC, in my case, it's my CEO. He loves it. He thinks that I believe in my idea. I have value that I'm showing. I have a team that's willing to rally behind it. He's happy about the innovation. He wants to fund me. That's exactly how Intel India grew. And I'm happy to tell you that I was just talking to Atul, and I told him, we are building AI inference engines for the globe out of the very smart people that Anant called out we have in AI space. So I really believe that out of all of you sitting here, if you leverage AI as a technology, you have tremendous verticals to go address, and don't limit yourself to the market in India. If you restrict yourself or constrain yourself to the market in India, remember that we are a $2.6 trillion economy, and you're restricting yourself to 2.6 trillion. The world today has about 88 trillion. So you are opening yourself to 30 times more probability of becoming a unicorn rather than just looking at India market. So I'll tell you 3 areas that I believe in the next 5 years, next 5 to 7 years max, will add $50 trillion to the world economy are AI, smart manufacturing, and connectivity, 5G. Recently, the Prime Minister is doing rounds of inviting technologists, VCs, health experts, and he's talking. And I heard in my technology sector, 2 VCs call out that we will not see unicorns from the village, so our focus should be the cities, our investment should be cities, and that really bothered me. 65 to 70% India is rural. But if we look at technology that enables connectivity, and it doesn't have to be 5G, it has to be scalable. Like Anant says, every technology has to scale to create value. 600,000 villages have to be powered with connectivity, with broadband, and then they can have access to the world. So if you're sitting in a tier 2 city or a tier 3 city, I assure you, we and many other companies are working towards connectivity in villages, and you can dream to be a unicorn even if you're sitting in a Gazipur on the eastern side of Uttar Pradesh or a Bihar or wherever else, Meghalaya, where you don't have broadband. You will soon get it, because then you can focus on the world market. India is transforming. We have a very, very favorable demographics. 65% of India is less than the age of 35. So we have hunger. The other thing, our middle class is growing. At one point of time, I used to see a demographic diagram of India which looked like a pyramid. Middle class was in the middle, top was, very pokey, small little triangle, and the base was the base of the pyramid. Now, the diagram that people are drawing is a mushroom. Middle class is growing significantly, which means we have the ability to spend. The other thing, innovation and adoption. I love the equation that Satya Nadella and Anant basically shared with us. Adoption of technology is being seen. 20 cents per gig is the data cost, and we are using 8.3 GB per month. So remember this one thing that, if one thing I can leave you with is focus on an area where you see convergence of technologies. Don't be too early in your idea where you don't have the convergence of other technologies to make your business successful. So look at convergence of technology, look at what are the needs and drive the innovation, because India is changing. Not only that, companies like Intel, Microsoft, Government of India, I feel you should look at as enablers, because money is not the reason why our startups fail. The reasons our startups fail is business models and innovation. I'm willing to stand up and provide an infrastructure such that you have access to technology. And similarly, government has made so many platforms which many of these verticals can, leverage. Our Aadhaar platform, unified payment interface, and, we are working with the government to create an AI platform. I think, 9,000 startups, 20 plus unicorns. I'm very proud of my country. And while I have shared with you 90% startups fail, let me share with you something that make you feel a little bit better. My intent is not to give you all the gloom story. Recently, I was in Israel, and I met the startup community, I met the VC funding community, I met the academicians, I met industry, I met our own companies, Mobileye, etc. You know what I found out? The data is no different in Israel. 90% of their startups also fail after 5 years. What is different? I'll tell you what is different. In India, from 2008 to 2018, the number of international patents grew from 0.7K to 2.1K, 3x. I'm very happy. India grew 3x. United States, which is already a leading economy, in 2008 had 51,000 international patents. In 2018, grew to 53K, grew by few percentage. Let me tell you a staggering number of China. China grew from 6,000 to 60,000, 6x. So 2008 to 2018, 6 to 60. But if I gave you a data of 2005, the reason I'm telling you 2005 data because we can do it too. In 2005, we were slightly ahead of China in number of international patents. What happened between 8 to 18? That's the fever we have to have. Of course, not corona, but the fever of hunger, of filing patents, creating value that we can then translate into the growth for our country. I'm going to skip some of this, but business models like as a service, I think India is a fantastic clean slate to drive business models. I also feel that cloud, AI data analytics, network and connectivity, and manufacturing technology are areas our startups should be thinking. I also saw one interesting startup. Oftentimes as an AI person, I say AI for AI, which means AI doing something AI and creating learning. Israel has some concept that I absolutely love. They call entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs creating an environment to enable infrastructure for other entrepreneurs. So I think the government, companies like ours, we have to look at how to encourage more startups, how to provide them with support they need to drive this change. The areas I think, like I said, AI will be at least 15 trillion in the next 5 years. How do we get most of it? I truly believe India has a perfect raw material to drive AI-based technology in the next few years. Why? We have people. People translates into data. We have, Atul himself was telling me, he was driving software kind of, infection. Build software, do this. India is synonymous to software. AI requires tremendous amount of software personnel. We have them. Growing up, I'm much older than many of you sitting here, but when I was growing up, my parents would not think of anything but engineering, math, medicine. We have tremendous amount of STEM graduates, 1 million Intel-relevant engineers graduating each year. So if I show you an AI timeline, only 15% of the effort goes into the real AI model building, training and inferencing. Rest is what we have, and I never worry that AI will take our jobs. AI will create better jobs for our people. Even a 10th grade pass can create data annotation, can create data context. Even the people sweeping the floors, the ladies over there can be taught, push red button for this, green button for this. So, and slowly we will reskill them to create more jobs. So in the areas of health, I'm really strong. I believe health should create many unicorns out of India. We have problems to solve, and we have raw materials to leverage. I want to tell you that AI has changed significantly. This example, it's not intentional to not make you read. I will tell you how Google changed from 2015 to 2016, 1 year. That's how the pace of AI intelligence is. In the 2015 timeframe, if you typed, why are PDF weak, portable document format, weak? And the answer would be Iraqi war, Jerusalem, or Korea, North Korea. Because weakness, they would not be able to identify the relationship between PDF and weakness. In a year's time, I typed, why are PDFs weak? It came up, oh, portable document format does not have this. What happened? A lot of data was generated by searches. Google built smartness into their engines. Once you did PDF and you clicked on why are PDFs actually weak because of whatever reasons that Microsoft Word has but PDF doesn't have, people sorted out this query. This was the result most people clicked on. So now context and grammar was understood that when this word is this coming with this word, this is the kind of answer they're looking for. And then if I tell you what Amazon is doing, and why can't we and many of our portals do, most of the revenues are built on upselling or cross-selling. We have many portals. Cross-selling means, if Nivruti loves to buy these handloom saris, I better show her handloom shawls. That's cross-selling. Upselling is, she has been shopping on a monthly basis. She's been spending, 2,000 rupees on this particular item, and she's bought 5 of them already. Let me sell her a more expensive one, and all of this based on AI algorithms. So AI services are also opportunities for our startups in any different segment that you can think of. I believe India, can I get a bottle of water? Has an opportunity in health, smart mobility, automation of manufacturing, agriculture. Why agriculture? It's not because, I have lots of farmers, etc. I have to look at Israel and United States. 2% of their population creates food for the entire country. In our case, 40%. So I believe 20x is the automation that we require, and definitely financial services. I will not spend much time, but I'm committed with the government, and thank you, can you open it? With the government to build an AI platform, and just for a simplicity explanation, something that works with everyone. Let me explain you what an AI platform is in this simple analogy. If you think of English language, we have nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs. Once you know all of this, you can build a sentence. And then you can say, oh yeah, if I have a verb and I put an adjective very fast, in that case, I'm able to convey this. So similar kind of platform we are building for AI. How can the data come in? When the data says this, it means this. This data, energy data can be linked with traffic data, can be linked with air data, and is this value we can create. So this kind of a platform I'm building like a grammar, such that many essays could be written, a movie could be written, a history can be written, whatever essay you want, you can write once you know these grammar statements and requirements. And our intent is to make it open source, to have the outcome will be annotated and curated data sets, will be data exchange platform, and foundational AI algorithms and tools. We have many startups working with us, as well as companies. I'll very quickly say this. Every 1% efficiency lost daily creates in a yearly output of 0. Every 1% gain, this is a fun equation, just to motivate you what automation and what benefit of 1% can do. each day, if you increase, you get a 40% like output. That's the promise of technology. Life is like Mario. My children love Mario. Lots of negativity will be thrown on you. Sometimes you have money, sometimes you don't have money. Ethics is so important with AI. What data to share, what not to share. Where is the bias? So in AI, 3 things remember, guys. Data, model, and use case. Data. Make sure you can use the data. Make sure that somebody who owns the data is aware of that data. Consent is there. Model, make sure no bias is there. Make sure your model tells the right thing. And use case, that is where I feel our opportunity lies. Find out the interesting AI use case and bring the $88 trillion here. Improve your 30x chance of becoming a unicorn. And finally, finishing with Mahatma Gandhi again, customer is the best visitor to your premise. Customer's requirement is the purpose of your work. Customer is the reason you exist. So innovation and customer is what I want to leave you with. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will have a quick Q&A session. Mr. Anant Maheshwari, I request you to please come up on stage, along with Nivruti Rai.
Thank you so much. It was a very, very riveting 2 presentations. And I have a daunting task of asking a few questions. But I must say that Anant has been giving me huge competition. Those who have been following him on Twitter, you will be following Tech that he's been conducting these days. All right. First, I wanted to ask Nivruti about the proof of concept that you spoke about, and that versus the pipe dream, I beg your pardon, the PowerPoint dream that a lot of people come up with. What do you have to say about ideas versus the execution skill?
See, like I said, ideas are awesome, but they are dime a dozen. And if I don't see you believe in your own idea, if I don't see the ability for you to take the idea into reality, then my trust, which is a critical factor that, like Anant also talked about, my trust in you is going to be low. If I see that whatever it took for you to drive even a small execution, which I call proof of concept, from a PowerPoint to a proof of concept, you suddenly get, a multifold increase in my trust. And I'm willing to then invest.
All right, Anant, you two are sitting at a vantage point. Microsoft also has incubated many startups. But what do you have to say about the entire journey from early stage to the growth stage? And how are you viewing the Indian startup culture vis-a-vis the rest of the world, because you have an interface with the rest of the world as well?
So I think we think about the 3 stages of a startup, as that's early stage, the growth stage, and the unicorns. The needs are very different. Yeah. At the early stage, you're looking for maybe a little amount of funding, a little amount of taking the idea, being in an ecosystem, getting engineering support to build something. We therefore try to make those connections happen with our engineering teams, with our fund that we have. That's at the early stage. At the growth stage, the companies have enough people chasing them with money.
Yes.
And therefore, money is not that big an issue at the growth stage. It really becomes, how do I find my customer scaling? How do I get access to a large customer pool? How do I even start innovating or pivoting my business model? So we get our business development teams and a very unique global model of commercial partner, where we take startups to customers and enterprise. And give them the Microsoft credibility to go and talk to customers. And then finally, at the unicorn stage, it is then they need to be treated like an enterprise. And therefore, they have very different needs, as was mentioned in the Udaan story. 30,000 people, no longer a startup. It is an enterprise. And at that time, you've got to give them the same level of attention and capability as enterprises need.
Right. So what is
Nisha, if I may add, I should have said earlier, but very much like Anant is saying, that, different stage of startup need different help.
Yes.
And I'm going to stand firm to my ground. Intel has a program that, we are partnering with the government as well as with IIT Mumbai. And we have our own separate program where we actually fund the POCs. I don't fund ideas that are just written. We are funding, but the point is not funding. The point is to get them over the hump and get them into a state where they're generating revenues. And I'm happy to tell you that there are companies that are incubated by Intel which are making multi-million-dollar revenue. So no longer am I looking at number of startups as my success criteria. I'm looking at number of revenues that they are generating. But again, these ideas have to have some product that they have developed for us to support.
All right, since we have a very short time, very quickly, both of you, how do you assess a startup, whether or not it's going to be promising, the 3 criteria that you judge them on? And I'm sure that our entrepreneur friends will take notes on that one.
Nivruti?
Okay, so, you could tell that I'm very passionate about AI. And there is a study, and if you haven't studied, please today go find yourself that article. This is a CEO of a company called Quid AI. His name is Bob Goodson. In 2009, he conducted a study based on artificial intelligence and came up with multiple factors and proved, Business Week was the one that put this challenge, proved 50 startups that would make it big. And I'm happy to tell you, most all of the 50 startups have really made it big. Ibibo was one of them. There was Etsy, there was Palantir, there was Zynga. It's amazing how, you can create a technology to predict such things. What I believe is 2 things. Market. Prove to me this is the market and study the market. Listen to what your customers said. Like Mahatma Gandhi said, customers define the purpose of your work. Once you show me this is my customer, this is what they want, and you have a unique business proposition or you have a unique innovation that's worthy of an international patent, in my book, I want to support this. And if it is more than software, I'm even more excited about it, because software, I think, we have done a lot. Time now is to create a product. Time now is to create a system. And that's what, I'm excited about funding.
So very quickly, to keep it short, same 3 principles that I judge myself on and any other leader that I come across. Am I able to create clarity? Am I able to generate energy? Am I able to deliver success?
All right, and we have time for one question from the audience, if somebody wants to take a shot. Yeah.
See a hand up there. Can you just use the mic?
What, in your opinion, is the one single thing that stops India from becoming or creating the patents for like what US or Israel or China are doing? A single most important thing that you think is responsible?
Perfect question, because I just complained a lot about it. I will tell you the one reason why I feel that we are not creating as many patents is for the first response to come back in India, it takes 4 years. First response, you file a disclosure, first response 4 years, as compared to China, Israel, and United States gets back in 1. That's the problem number 1. But problem number 2 is us also. We have to dream bigger. We don't have to be limiting ourselves to our little village, our little city, our country. We have to solve the problem for us, but also applicable to the world.
I may have a slightly contrarian view on this. I know there is a big world out there, 7 billion people, and a very large economy out there. But I don't shortchange the over billion people that we have inside and the myriad problems that we have in India. I don't think we are doing enough to solve our own problems. If we really focus ourselves on that, there'll be enough patents.
All right, one question I'm itching to ask, and we just have 2 minutes for it. Nivruti, you had once said that 5G revolution in 2020 is something which is critical. We are in 2020. 5G is not in sight, also because of what telecom is going through. Now, telecom, data, that's just so important for future innovation. Where do you see us standing today?
Very good question, very relevant. I see the biggest problem is, remember I told you 3 things about data or creating value out of data is data, model, and use case. In 5G, we know data. You know, Anant talked about we'll have 160 some zettabytes. Zetta has 21 zeros. That much data in the next few years. Data we know, you know, security has to be there, consent has to be there. We also are aware of model, you know, we make sure that the model doesn't have bias. What we don't know in 5G is what are those use cases? Who will buy those use cases? Where are the customers for this? The minute we understand, why do you think the telecom industry is not investing? Because they don't know how to bring back the money. Investment should translate into value. But the minute we understand, 5G is no longer just phones, guys. 5G is a bucket of opportunities. You know, so whether it is in the making their city smart or whether it's in the industry, 5G will be leveraged everywhere. But we have to figure out today, 5G's use case and value is very limited. And that's why nobody's investing. The minute we crack that need, the 1.23 billion people have, you'll see the Reliances and the Intels and everybody start investing.
Right, one quick question, if you can keep it very short.
I represent a lot of cases on behalf of taxpayers, and I see that a lot of pendencies therein as far as appellate proceedings are concerned in all laws. Why is Indian judiciary not using AI to deliver quick judgments? Because as such, the law is based on precedents of the past, where AI can be used.
Yeah, Nivruti, you want to talk about that?
I've got Nisha sitting right in front here. I think he can answer that question a lot better than I can.
Okay, so we have the house full of talent, but unfortunately we have very short time. But one last question.
I'll give a quick answer to that one. So today in the country, there is one lawyer to 1,000 people, and that's why we have, you know, so many crores of cases open. And I'm fully in partnership with you. We need to use technology to address these cases, especially the ones which are if this, then that. We can build a simple algorithm like that, you know, you can create a switch statement, if A, then do B, if B, then do C. Those kind of cases should be resolved, and you will realize that 80% of the pending cases would be gone. And I'm fully with you. You and us and everybody needs to push to be technology to be used in such cases. But good point.
I'll just build on that question, something that affects all of us, and just take an example of best-in-class innovation coming out of India. If you all would have heard about Dr. Devi Shetty, the fact that he's driving 17% of heart surgeries in India, which compares very nicely to all the heart surgeries that happen in all of United Kingdom. He totally believes, in spite of being one of the best surgeons in the world, that technology is actually the solution. AI and communication is actually the solution for surgical interventions anywhere in the world. And he truly believes that in 10 years' time, there may be laws to say a doctor has to take some input from an AI-based model before the doctor can complete the complete diagnosis. So I think there are many fields that are getting disrupted, and there are practitioners in the field who are driving the change. It's not people coming from outside.
I completely agree because I'm contributing towards Narayan Hridayal's AI automation.
All right, we are all on the same page. Thank you so much. It was a riveting conversation. And of course, data is the crude, and you need technology to make it into oil for our usage. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Atulji, I request you to please come forward and felicitate our speakers.
Excuse me. I just wanted to grab this opportunity to thank.
Thank you. Take a picture on the camera.
I'm sorry, the question, we can take it during the lunch break.
Not a question, actually. It's a feedback to Microsoft.
Okay.
I just want to grab this opportunity to thank Microsoft.
Thank you.
No, 5 years ago, Microsoft laid the foundation. It was a trigger point to start our company, which is running successfully now. It was because of the startup program, Bispark.
Thank you so much. Thanks for saying thanks.
And I have a lot to say, but there is no time.
Thank you.
All right. Atulji?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
We'll take a picture. Come.
All right, with that, I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank all our sponsors, without which this event would not have been possible. Our knowledge partner, KPMG India, Hall of Fame partner,
Thank you so
Asa
much.
Fashion Private Limited, Hall of Fame partner, Avendus Capital, Hall of Fame partner, Ascent Overseas Education, our investor partner, Venture Catalyst, innovation partner, Amazon, legal partner, Nisha Desai Associates, legal partner, DSK Legal, our speaker and charter member lounge, IIFL Investment Managers, our gold partner, Tata Industries, gold partner, Bank of Baroda, country partner, DIT UK, our session partner, Citi, our session partner, NetApp India Accelerator, our workshop partner, Microsoft, our session partner, IndoStar, our session partner, IndoSpace, silver partner, SPI, Batch, and lanyard partner, WNS, and our lunch partner, Onwards Technologies.